The unexpected nurse, the first thing he felt was pain. It spread through his ribs and chest like fire, and he struggled to open his eyes. The air smelled of metal and medicine, and the faint hum of engines surrounded him when his vision cleared. He saw a dim ceiling with faint blue lights. He was lying on a medical bed inside a spaceship's medbay. Everything was quiet, too quiet. Then he heard it, a soft sound of claws clicking against the floor. It was gentle but clear, like someone. Small was walking closer. He turned his head slowly, and his breath caught. Standing by the door was a tiny figure, no taller than his chest. She had golden fur on her pointed ears, long dark hair tied behind her head, and bright amber eyes that seemed to glow in the light. She was wearing a clean white uniform with silver straps and a small pouch at her waist. Her tail swayed slowly. Behind her, the little Beastwoman walked in without a word. She carried a small tray filled with strange medical tools and vials of glowing liquid. Her movements were quick and precise, and there was something in her eyes, focus, determination. She stopped beside his bed and looked down at him. Her voice was soft but firm. "Relax," she said. "You're safe here." He tried to ask who she was, but before he could speak, she set the tray down and climbed onto the bed. Her weight was light, but the sudden closeness startled him. She moved over him with practiced ease, checking his bandages and pressing. Her hands gently along his ribs. Every touch made him wince, but she didn't stop. "You've cracked 2 ribs," she said, "but you're lucky, no internal bleeding." Her hands were small, but her grip was strong. She worked with the speed of someone who had done this many times before. He noticed faint scars on her arms, thin lines that could only be from battles. She didn't look like just a nurse. There was something else about her, something dangerous. A sudden tremor shook the medbay. The bed rattled, and a few tools fell from the tray. The ship's alarms began to blare. Red lights flashing on the walls. He tried to sit up, but the pain made him groan. The Beastwoman didn't panic. She glanced at the door. Then back at him, her tail twitched sharply, like a signal of readiness, without another word. She hopped off the bed and moved to the wall. She pressed a hidden panel, and a small compartment opened, revealing a short spear with a curved blade. She grabbed it with ease, spinning it once in her hand. Her eyes were sharp now, and her ears twitched as if listening for footsteps. "You can stand?" she asked. He hesitated, then nodded weakly. "Good," she said. "Then follow me." He had no idea what was happening. One moment he was waking up from a mission gone wrong. And now he was being ordered around by a tiny alien nurse with a spear, but something about her made him trust her without question. He swung his legs off the bed, gritting his teeth against the pain. She stood by the door, ready to move. Through the small medbay window, he caught a glimpse of the outside. Dark shapes moving against the stars. Something was boarding the ship. The Beastwoman looked back at him, her eyes meeting his. "Stay close to me," she said. "If they get you, it's over for all of us." Before he could ask what she meant, she opened the door and stepped into the hallway. The red lights painted her fur in a deep crimson glow. Her small figure moved quickly, tail swaying for balance, spear ready in her hands. He followed, limping slightly, his mind full of questions, but deep inside he knew one thing. Whatever was happening, she wasn't just a nurse, she was something far more dangerous. And maybe the only one who could keep him alive. Not just a nurse. The hallway was narrow and dim, lit only by the flashing red emergency lights every few seconds. The ship's hull groaned as if something heavy was pressing against it. The Beastwoman nurse moved fast, her small feet silent on the metal floor, her ears twitching at every sound. He followed, still holding his side. Every step sending a sharp ache through his ribs, but her speed left him no choice. If he slowed down, he'd lose her in the maze of corridors. Suddenly, a deep metallic thud echoed through the ship. She froze, her spear angled low, her eyes narrowing toward the sound borders. She whispered, her voice was calm. But her tail had stiffened. She turned her head to him. "Stay behind me, no matter what." They moved toward a junction. And he caught a glimpse of something. In the distance, a small floating machine. Round and glinting under the red lights, it spun slowly, scanning the hallway with a blue beam. He recognized it instantly. A scout drone. If it spotted them, more would follow, and then the soldiers would come. The Beastwoman didn't hesitate. She crouched low. Moving with the grace of a predator, before the drone could turn toward them, she sprang forward. Her small frame hit the wall, rebounding into the air, spear flashing in her hands. The curved blade struck the drone in a single, clean motion. Sparks burst out, and the machine dropped to the floor. Twitching before going still, he stared at her in shock. You're not just a nurse, are you?" he said. She didn't answer right away. She pulled the spear free and shook the broken machine off its blade. Finally, she glanced at him with a faint smirk. "I was a soldier before I learned medicine." She stepped closer, her golden eyes fixed on his. "And tonight, I'm both." Another alarm blared. This one sharper. She grabbed his wrist and pulled him down another hallway. As they ran, he noticed the way her muscles moved under her. Fur, every step was controlled, every movement with purpose. It was the way trained fighters moved, not healers. He wanted to ask more. But the distant sound of heavy boots against metal kept his mouth shut. They reached a sealed blast door. And she stopped. Pulling a small device from her pouch, with quick hands, she attached it to the panel. And the door slid open halfway before jamming. She slipped through the gap and motioned for him to follow. Inside was a dim storage room filled with crates and tools. She closed the door behind them and leaned against the wall. Her breathing steady. He, on the other hand, was gasping, his ribs burning with each breath. She knelt beside him and pulled a small injector from her belt. "This will help with the pain," she said, pressing it against his arm. A cold sensation spread through him, and the pain dulled almost instantly. He let out a shaky sigh. "Why are they after me?" She looked at him for a long moment, her tail curling around her legs. "There's something in your blood," she said softly. "Something they need," he frowned. "What are you talking about?" She stood up, walking toward the other side of the room, her spear resting against her shoulder. "My people have fought them for years," she said. "They kill, they take, they destroy, but recently they've been searching for humans." Her eyes met his again. "You're special, and that makes you dangerous to them." Before he could respond, the wall behind them shook violently. Dust fell from the ceiling, and the sound of tearing metal filled the air. Her ears shot up, and she grabbed her spear, moving toward the door. "They've breached this section," she said quickly. "We can't stay here." She opened the door just enough to peer out. The hallway was empty, but the sound of marching grew closer. She turned back to him, her voice low but firm. "Stay close, human. And if I tell you to run, you run." He swallowed hard, nodding. She stepped into the hallway first, scanning in both directions. Her small frame seemed almost fragile in the flickering light, but he knew now that was only an illusion. She was dangerous, fast, and deadly when she needed to be, and right. Now, she was his only hope of surviving whatever was hunting him. The ship under attack the moment they stepped into the hallway. The smell of smoke hit him. It was thick, bitter, and carried the metallic taste of burning wires, somewhere far ahead. He heard the sharp crack of gunfire mixed with the high-pitched whine of energy blasts. The Beastwoman nurse, no, the warrior, kept low, her golden eyes scanning every shadow. Her spear's blade caught the light with each movement. A sudden burst of sparks rained from the ceiling as a pipe overhead exploded. He flinched, but she didn't stop moving. Her tail stayed still now, a sign she was fully focused on the fight ahead. They passed a section where the hull had been breached through the torn metal. He caught glimpses of space, endless black dotted with cold stars. Small shapes moved against that darkness. Drones, dozens of them, climbing inside like insects. The first drone spotted them and screeched, its mechanical limbs scraping the floor. Before it could fire, she was already in the air. Her spear slashed through its head in a single motion. It fell with a heavy clang, but more were coming fast. He grabbed a metal bar from the wall, gripping it like a weapon. The nurse spun her spear in a tight circle, deflecting a bolt of blue energy that zipped past his head. Then she leaped forward, moving so fast her white uniform blurred. Her strikes were precise, each hit disabling a drone instantly. Still, for every one she destroyed, another seemed to appear. "Move!" she shouted, pulling him toward a side passage. They sprinted, boots and claws clanging against the floor. A drone fired from behind, and the blast grazed his shoulder. Sending a burst of pain through him, he stumbled, but she caught his arm, dragging him along with surprising strength. Her voice was sharp but steady. "You can't stop if they surround us. We're done." The passage opened into a larger corridor lined with windows through the glass. He could see the enemy ship latched onto theirs like a parasite. Its hull was covered in jagged metal and strange glowing symbols. Shadowy figures moved along it, forcing open hatches and cutting through panels. It wasn't just drones, soldiers. "We're coming." She pushed him toward a heavy blast door at the end of the corridor. Her claws tapped quickly on the control panel, but the system flashed red, locked. She hissed in frustration, then turned her head sharply. The sound of boots was coming from behind. The enemy had found them. With no other choice, she spun her spear into a defensive stance. The first soldier through the smoke was tall, armored, and carrying a weapon that looked like a mix of a rifle and a blade. The nurse charged before he could aim, sliding low and hooking his leg. He crashed to the ground, and she drove her spear into the joint of his armor. The second soldier rushed in, and this time she used the wall, kicking off it to strike from above. Her movements were wild yet calculated, every leap, every slash perfectly timed. He swung his metal bar at one of the drones trying to flank her. It cracked against the machine's head, denting it before it collapsed. The fight was chaotic. The air filled with sparks, shouts, and the crackle of weapons. Then, as quickly as it had started, the corridor fell silent. The soldiers lay still, their weapons scattered. She breathed hard, her fur damp with sweat, but her eyes still sharp. Without wasting time, she grabbed a key card from one of the fallen soldiers and swiped it through the blast door's panel. The door slid open, revealing a narrow maintenance tunnel. She shoved him inside and followed, sealing it behind them. The noise of the battle became muffled, replaced by the hum of hidden machinery. As they moved through the tunnel, she finally spoke. "They're not here to destroy the ship," she said quietly. "They're here for you." Her words sank into him like ice. He wanted to ask how she knew, but her expression told him she wasn't ready to explain yet. Instead, she just kept moving, her small figure leading him deeper into the shadows of the ship. Hunted, the maintenance tunnel was narrow and dim. Pipes and cables ran along the walls, humming softly. The air was warmer here, carrying the scent of oil and metal. Every few steps, the Beastwoman nurse paused, ears twitching, listening for sounds from beyond the thin walls. Her golden eyes reflected the faint light like a predator's in the dark. He followed close behind, his shoulder brushing the cold metal. His ribs still ached, but the painkiller she had given him kept him moving. Somewhere above them, heavy boots pounded against the floor. Enemy soldiers were sweeping the ship section by section. The tunnel vibrated slightly with every blast from the fighting elsewhere. He knew it was only a matter of time before the enemy searched here too. They reached a small hatch, and she crouched, peering through the slits. Beyond it was another corridor, but this one was silent. She turned back to him and spoke in a low voice. "We cross quickly. No noise." He nodded, gripping his metal. Bar tighter. She slid the hatch open just enough for them to slip out. The corridor felt strange, too quiet. Lights flickered weakly, and the walls bore scorch marks from earlier fighting. They moved fast, their footsteps soft, halfway across. A faint clicking sound echoed behind them. He froze, recognizing the noise drones. The nurse spun around, spear ready. 3 small drones rolled into view, their single red eyes glowing in the dim light. One scanned the corridor and emitted a sharp, metallic screech. In seconds, the others opened compartments on their sides, revealing small, needle-like weapons. She didn't wait. She dashed forward in a blur, slashing through the first drone before it could fire. Metal shards scattered. Across the floor, "Run!" she shouted. He didn't argue. They bolted down the corridor as the 2 remaining drones gave chase. The nurse leaped onto the wall, using it as a springboard to spin midair and strike one. Her spear sliced it cleanly in half, sparks lighting up her fur for a brief second. The last drone fired a dart that embedded itself in the wall just inches from his head. He ducked, and she slammed her spear through its core, ending it instantly. They didn't slow down. She led him into another maintenance hatch and sealed it behind them. Her breathing was fast now, her fur slightly ruffled, but her eyes still burned with focus. "They're not guessing where we are," she said quietly. "They're tracking us." "How?" he asked, his voice hushed. She tapped the small dart stuck in the wall outside the hatch. "It's a tag," she said. "If one hits you, they'll know exactly where you are." The thought made his skin crawl. He glanced at her. "And you know all this because?" Her tail flicked once. "Because I've been hunted by them before." Her voice held no fear, just memory. It made him wonder what kind of life she had lived before becoming a nurse. He wanted to ask, but she suddenly raised her hand, signaling. Silence. A faint metallic creak came from ahead, slowly. She crawled forward until they reached a vent that looked down into another part of the ship. Below them, 2 enemy soldiers were searching a storage room. They spoke in a harsh, guttural language he didn't understand. But the way they kept scanning the shadows made it clear they were looking for someone. She watched them for a long moment before whispering. They're sweeping every section. Her gaze met his. "We can't keep running forever." She turned and began moving back through the tunnel. After several twists and turns, they reached a vertical shaft with a ladder. "This goes up to the crew quarters," she said. "Fewer patrols there." He followed her up, the metal rungs cold under his hands. They climbed in silence. The distant hum of the ship's engines, the only sound at the top. She eased the hatch open and peeked out. The hallway above was dim but empty. She slipped out first, motioning for him to follow once he was through. She closed the hatch softly. Then she looked down the hall and froze. In the distance, a shadow moved slow, deliberate, and coming toward them. Her grip on the spear tightened. She didn't look back at him, but her voice was low and certain. "They found us," she said. "Stay close and don't fall behind." The last stand in the med bathy ran. The shadow behind them moved faster now, joined by the sound of more boots pounding on metal. Every step they took, the enemy took too. The nurse darted ahead, her tail streaming behind her, spear gripped tight. She knew the ship better than anyone, turning into narrow passages and slipping through side doors without hesitation. The human kept up as best as he could, his ribs aching again. He didn't know where she was leading him until they burst through a sliding door back into the medbay. The same room where he had first opened his eyes. It was dim now, the overhead lights flickering, shadows crawling along the walls. The smell of antiseptic mixed with the scent of smoke drifting in from the corridors. She didn't waste a second. She ran to the cabinets, pulling out every tool and vial she could carry. "Help me," she ordered, tossing him a small box inside. Were metal clamps, needles, and rolls of sterile bandages. He didn't know what she planned, but her speed made it clear they didn't have much time. The door control beeped, warning that someone was trying to override the lock. Her ears flicked toward the sound. She moved to the far corner and pulled a panel from the wall, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside was not medical equipment, but weapons, short knives, shock batons, even a small energy pistol. She tossed him the pistol. "Point and shoot. Don't think too much." The lock gave a final loud beep, and the door slid open with a hiss. 2 drones rolled in first, followed by 3 armored soldiers. They were taller than him, with thick plating over their bodies and glowing red visors. The nurse didn't hesitate. She leaped on to the nearest drone. Driving her spear into its eye, it sparked violently, collapsing under her weight. The human fired the pistol at the second drone. The shot wasn't clean, but it hit, and the machine jerked before going still. One of the soldiers raised his weapon, aiming for the nurse. She spun, blocking the shot with her spear's blade, the impact sending her sliding back. Another soldier charged him. Instinct took over. He swung the pistol like a club, hitting the side of the soldier's helmet. It wasn't enough to drop him, but it gave the nurse the opening she needed. She darted forward, slashing at the gaps in the soldier's armor. The fight was fast and brutal. The medbay echoed with the clash of metal, the hiss of energy, fire, and the sharp growls of the nurse. She moved like lightning, jumping from one attacker to another. The human tried to cover her back, shooting whenever an enemy turned toward her. But the soldiers were strong and for every one that fell, another seemed to take its place. One of the soldiers caught her across the side with a heavy strike. She stumbled, fur matted with blood. He rushed to her, but she waved him back, eyes blazing. "Keep fighting." She snarled. Her voice carried a fierce command, not a plea, but an order. It pushed him forward. He blocked a drone's claw with his arm, gritting his teeth against the pain, and fired point blank into its head. The last soldier lunged for the nurse, but she met him head on. Her spear pierced through the weak point in his armor. The soldier collapsed, and the room fell silent except for the sound of their breathing. He turned to her, seeing the blood soaking her uniform. She leaned heavily on her spear, her tail low, but her eyes still sharp. He stepped closer. "You're hurt." She gave a small, tired smile. "Not as bad as you think." Then, softer, almost to herself, she added, "I told you I'd keep you alive." He didn't understand why she was risking so much for him, but in her gaze, he saw something more than duty, a promise, old and unbroken. She limped to the wall, sealing the medbay door again. For now, they were safe. But they both knew the enemy would return, and next time, they might not have the strength to hold them off. The truth about the death of medbay was quiet now. Only the soft hum of the ship's systems filled the air. The nurse sat on the edge of a bed, her small frame slouched, fur damp with sweat. She pressed a cloth against the wound on her side, the white fabric quickly turning red. He stood nearby, unsure if he should speak. The pistol felt heavy in his hand. Even though the fight was over, finally he set it down and moved toward her. "Let me help," he said. She looked up at him for a moment before giving a short nod. He took the cloth from her and held it against the wound, feeling the heat of her blood. Up close, he could see the fine texture of her fur and the small scars hidden beneath it. Scars that told stories he didn't know yet. "You fight like you've done it all your life," he said. She gave a faint smirk. "That's because I have." Her gaze shifted away, as if she was looking somewhere far beyond the medbay walls. When I was younger, my clan fought the same enemy that hunts you now. She said quietly, "They burned our homes, took our land, and killed anyone who resisted." He stayed silent. Letting her speak, one day, when I was barely more than a child, I was cornered by one of their soldiers, she continued. I thought it was the end. Her ears twitched slightly, but a human soldier appeared. Just one man, he fought them off and carried me to safety. She paused, her tail curling slowly around her legs. I never learned his name, she said. But I swore an oath my life would be used to protect humans whenever I could. Her golden eyes met his, steady and unflinching. That's why I'm here, why I won't let them take you. He absorbed her words, feeling a strange weight in his chest. It wasn't just loyalty, it was something deeper. Forged in blood and survival, you said they're after me because of my blood. He said carefully. She nodded. Your kind carries something rare. An immunity. Her voice dropped lower. There's a plague spreading through my people. One that kills without mercy. She tightened her grip on the cloth. Your blood might hold the cure. The room felt smaller now, the walls closing in with the weight of her truth. You mean? If they get me, they'll use me to control you. He asked. They'll use you to control everyone. She replied sharply. That's why I can't let them take you alive. He looked down at his hands, feeling the reality sink in. His survival wasn't just about him anymore. It was about an entire species depending on him. The nurse stood, wincing at the pain in her side. We can't stay here. The captain needs us on the bridge, she said. Her tone was steady again. The moment of vulnerability already locked away. They left the medbay, moving through the quiet corridors. The sound of distant fighting still echoed somewhere in the ship. When they reached the lift, she leaned against the wall, breathing slowly. He could see she was still hurting, but her focus never wavered. You're bleeding, he said again. She smirked faintly. You're limping. The lift doors opened, revealing the bridge. The captain was there, shouting orders as crew members scrambled at their stations through the massive forward window. The enemy mothership loomed, a jagged shadow blotting out the stars. It was enormous, bristling with weapons and crawling with smaller ships. The nurse stepped forward, her voice cutting through the noise. They're locking us in. We either break free now or we don't break free at all. The captain gave her a grim nod. Then he turned to the human. I hear you can fight. You're coming with us. For a moment, he hesitated. Glancing at the nurse, her eyes told him everything without words. This was the fight they couldn't avoid. He nodded, feeling the weight of the moment settle. Over him like armor, the nurse gripped her spear tighter. Her golden eyes locked on the view ahead. Then we make them regret boarding our ship, she said, her voice low and steady. He had never heard her sound more certain, and in that moment, he knew whatever happened next, they'd face it together. The bond forged in battle the bridge shook as the first blast from the enemy mothership struck their shields. Blue energy rippled across the glass-like barrier. Casting sharp light over the crew's faces, the captain barked orders, but the noise was drowned out by the roar of engines powering up. The nurse stood beside the human, her small frame tense, spear ready even here. Her golden eyes never left the enemy ship. They'll try to breach again, she said quietly. He nodded, gripping the energy pistol they had given him. This wasn't just about survival anymore. He understood that now. If they failed, the enemy wouldn't just take him. They'd take her people's last chance to live. The captain turned to them. You too, you're going to the port defense station without hesitation. The nurse grabbed his arm and pulled him toward the side exit. The hallway beyond was dim and filled with the sound of distant gunfire. Her ears twitched at every sound. Reading the battle through vibrations and echoes, when they reached the defense station, the door slid open too. reveal a small control room overlooking the docking bay. Below, the enemy had already forced their way inside. Dozens of armored soldiers poured in, backed by a wave of drones. The human stomach tightened. There were too many, but the nurse didn't flinch. She moved to the control panel, fingers flying over the keys. Activating automated turrets mounted along the walls, the turrets came alive, spitting streams of energy fire into the invaders. Soldiers fell, drones exploded into fragments, but still. They kept coming. The nurse grabbed her spear and climbed onto the rail, looking down at the chaos below. "You're not thinking of?" he started. She leaped without hesitation, landing on the back of a soldier and striking down two more before her feet even touched the ground. He fired from above, picking off drones that tried to flank her. Her movements were a blur, leaping, slashing, spinning. Every strike was clean, every motion precise. For a moment, he forgot to breathe. But a sudden flash to his left snapped him back. A group of soldiers had broken away and were coming up the stairs toward him. He turned the pistol on them, firing until the power cell was nearly drained. One soldier reached him, swinging a heavy blade he blocked with the pistol, the impact jarring his arm. Then, suddenly, the soldier jerked and fell. The nurse stood behind him, panting, spear dripping with oil and blood. "You all right?" she asked. He nodded, his chest heaving. Her ears twitched again, and she looked toward the docking bay doors. The enemy was pulling back. The surviving soldiers and drones retreated toward their mothership, dragging the bodies of their fallen. Then, with a heavy thud, the docking clamps disengaged, and the enemy ship began to drift away. The bridge confirmed it seconds later. The invaders were retreating. Cheers erupted across the crew channels, but on the platform, the nurse only stood still, watching the enemy ship disappear into the distance. Finally, she turned to him. "It's over for now," she said softly. They made their way back to the medbay. He collapsed onto the same bed where he had first woken up. This time, there was no alarm, no sudden fight, only the quiet hum of the ship and the soft sound of her moving around the room. She returned with fresh bandages and began tending his wounds, her touch gentler now. "You kept your promise," he said after a moment. Her ears flicked, and she gave a small smile. "I told you to relax," she replied, the same words she had spoken when they first met. He chuckled, even though it hurt his ribs, for the first time since he woke up. The tension in his chest eased outside the viewport. The stars drifted by in silent beauty. He realized that whatever came next, he trusted her completely. She wasn't just a nurse. She wasn't just a warrior. She was his protector, and he was hers somewhere deep inside. He knew this wasn't the end of their story. It was only the beginning.